Oh, that's pretty nice. I could use that. Okay. Hi, I'm Amos, and I'm here at the Moog booth at the NAMM Show 2015. We're still setting up and getting started. It's the day before the show, but I just wanted to take a moment and give a little sneak peek at some of the new software that we're rolling out for the Sub37 synthesizer. We introduced the Sub37 last year, but since then we've continued to do more development, and we now have a firmware version 1.1 update with a lot of really interesting new features. And so I'm just going to show a few of those right quickly. Most of what we've added has to do with the step editing functionality. The step sequencer has always been an integral part of the Sub37, but from the beginning we intended that it should be hands-on, something that you can manipulate live and really have it be a performance partner as you're playing. And so what we've done here, I'll show you, is the panel has this legend step, so you press bank and latch, and it takes you into step edit mode, and these 16 step buttons are now steps of your sequence. And so you can see that as the sequence is stepping along, it's showing you which step is playing. You can also note that it's playing backwards and forwards. We've, in this new firmware version, all of the modifiers that affect the arpeggiator now affect the step sequencer as well. So you have a lot of ways you can mutate and manipulate and change your sequence as you're playing. Now, as far as the step editing is concerned, you can select each individual step, press and hold, and you can now overdub just that one individual note. So I'll go back, I'll just play this sequence here. And if you decide you just want to change one note, that's fine. You can go in there and dub it in, and it's fine. You can also turn notes on and off very easily just by pressing to toggle rests on and off. And you can press groups of steps to tie them together, and then press again to untie. So that's extremely useful. You can rotate the pattern now. You can press and move the whole pattern relative to the downbeat. You're shifting all the pattern data backwards or forwards in time. Additionally, you can change the length of a pattern on the fly by picking a new last step. And without losing synchronization, you can easily come up with different variations on your pattern based on length. Additionally, in this step edit mode, you can switch into record mode while you're playing and overdub live. And at this point, it's acting sort of like a phrase sampler. And you can see it just catches the last thing that you played. And if you decide you want to change a little bit of it, you can just overdub. And if you think that those notes were wrong, you can just go in and punch them in differently. And so the ability to just change things up as you're going is really quite wonderful. All right, so those are most of the sequence functions here. And this just opens it up and allows for the full potential of the sequencer, because you're not limited to one pass and then you're stuck with what you've got. You can keep changing and throwing new variations and manipulating it as you go. So briefly, I'll mention a couple of other things here. And one is that you can swing. This sequence is itself has a little bit of swing on it. All right, so here's my sequence. I'll just go into the edit menu here, and on the arpeggiator edit menu, you can now control the swing. And you can get positive or negative swing, and the LFOs are also swing if they're synchronized to the arpeggiator. So you can see there that LFO is doing a little short, long syncopated thing. And you can get really quite weird with it and very funky and swung. It's quite a lot of fun. I'll just switch over to another sequence that I have in the oven. So there's an example of a really funky little sequence. It's got a lot of heavy swing, it's playing backwards and forwards, and we've got some really interesting modulations going on. And this brings me to another thing that's new in the v1.1 firmware, which is we've made it a lot easier to set the programmable mod destinations. You can set up a programmable destination that is virtually any parameter on the synthesizer, and you can now set that very quickly just by pressing and holding the mod destination button and then pressing the thing that you want to modulate. And so like I'll just pick slope here and turn up the amount of modulation. Ah, there we are. And you can see slope is now modulating, or we'll change that to noise level.
So you literally give the knob a tiny little tweak.
That's right, yeah, and it doesn't affect the change of the sound, the little tweak that you make, it just sets the mapping.
Oh, okay, that's better. That's neat.
Yeah, so it just makes patch creation so much quicker and more intuitive.
I remember from before it was kind of a menu-driven element, so it's nice.
You can dive in and there is a menu, and here it is, and it's got there are 100 things, 80 things on this menu, but you don't need the menu. Now you can just shortcut straight past it. All right, so that is essentially the new features, with the very large exception of CV mapping. We've also added the ability, such as the Minotaur has, of taking the CV inputs for pitch, gate, and volume, and instead mapping them to any parameter of the sound. And that means that you can use, if you're a modular person, you can use control voltages. If you're just a player, you can use an expression pedal. But if you can imagine tying the expression pedal to the amount of drive, or to the time of your envelopes, or the level of an oscillator, it just opens up the possibilities for live expression tremendously.
So you literally can take an external voltage and have it control any parameter.
Any parameter of the sound, absolutely.
That's crazy.
And in addition to that, there are a couple of other special mappings, such as the ability to advance the sequencer from a voltage trigger. And so that means you can take an external CV gate sequencer and directly drive the step sequencer, which I've just shown you can program. You can do all of these kinds of programming things on the fly whilst your sequencer is being stepped from an analog clock somewhere, tied in with the rest of your rig. And it's just really, really a ton of fun. So those are pretty much the new features in V1.1. This is going to be a free update for all customers. You'll get an email if you've registered your Sub37. Probably sometime in February, we'll get all of this wrapped up and packaged and ready for people to update. Free update via MIDI, and you'll get all of these new features on your instrument.
Fantastic. Thanks very much, Amos.
It's a pleasure. Thank you.
Fantastic.
All right. Well, thanks very much for listening. Cheers.